let's jump right into the slides. So one of the causes for increased demand volatility and shortened customer lead times is the trend toward more empowered consumers. Mass customization is the business model that allows customers to purchase a product that's customized to meet their exact needs. For example, you can go out and customize the color and features of your car. You can have your own drawing, you can put it on a t-shirt, you can choose your laptop computer specs, you can create a customized pair of sneakers, all sorts of stuff is available today. The concept of real-time mass customization and personalization has been around for about 10 or 15 years, but it's really only in the last few years that it's taken off and been profitable for companies or added significantly to their sales. Earlier, it was just more of drawing attention to their brand, helping them build awareness and increase sales of their existing mass-produced products, but that's been changing more lately. Google is a recent example via their purchase of Motorola Mobility a few years ago. They've got the new Moto X phone that I've seen a lot of commercials for lately, and you can go online and with their Moto Maker tool, you can build your own customized phone, choose the front, back, accent colors. Motorola claims it's the first smartphone designed and assembled in the USA, which is pretty cool. Nike ID is another example, and really they're one of the first successful examples. You can go out and customize your sneakers online on the Nike homepage, or at some of the physical store branches you can do that as well. They've got a pretty large online community, and Nike ID actually accounts for close to 20% of their store revenue. So speaking of smartphones, maybe not a Moto X, but maybe an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy. How many of you have used your smartphones in a store to check prices or compare with other stores while you're shopping? So according to recent research, as it says on the slide, 75% of consumers use their smartphones in stores, and 63% compare prices with other retailers. So this ability for us consumers to quickly access information from virtually anywhere while we're shopping, it's empowered us to make more value-based purchasing decisions, and it's caused a lot less brand loyalty. Maybe it doesn't impact the big guys like if you're Apple or Microsoft or Coke, but it impacts most everyone else. So it's much harder for companies to forecast sales accurately because competitive products and pricing can change very quickly depending on who is out there offering a new or better deal or advertising a new promotion, and the fact that consumers can access this information immediately and from virtually anywhere, like while you're shopping. A recent personal example of mine from a few weeks back, I was looking to buy an iPhone for my son's birthday. He was turning 17 years old. We're driving in our car, going to the store where I typically buy electronics or would look to buy a phone. Like Best Buy, Walmart, Radio Shack was what I had in my head. I hadn't really done a lot of research. My son is sitting next to me in the passenger seat. He had my smartphone, and he's probing around on the internet, and he found a deal at Target. It was a promotional deal that you could get the phone and a protective case, and it was the best deal out there. So we ended up driving to Target, and that's where we bought the phone. So my retail brand store loyalty kind of went out the window, and I went after the best deal. I still bought an Apple phone, but I bought it from whoever had the best deal. So this kind of thing only adds to the challenges that companies face in efficiently trying to manage their own supply chains, trying to predict that demand. So what are some challenges that make-to-stock companies typically face? You can improve forecast accuracy, but forecasts are never going to be perfect. Per the previous slide, demand changes pretty quickly. Forecasting is not getting any easier. So forecast uncertainty, it's always going to be around. It's going to continue to be a challenge. Make-to-stock companies typically have longer outbound supply chains with more FGI inventory stocking locations, and that increases their risk of higher inventory-driven costs like obsolete inventory, loss, damage, shrinkage, carrying costs, all the good old inventory-driven cost information. It's a greater issue in industries where the product or material has a short life cycle, so things like high tech. Another factor, the bullwhip effect, is a challenge. That concept has been around forever, about 50 years actually, but it still occurs and it's still relevant. It was first described in I think the early 60s, but now it became known as the bullwhip effect, because if you look at the slide there, each of the progressive graphs, it kind of looks like the cracking of a bullwhip. And basically, it's a phenomenon that describes as you move up the supply chain from the end consumer up to the raw material supplier, each participant has a greater or an amplified variation in their demand, and they have more need for safety stock. So you see more inventory and inventory risk. It occurs to a larger extent in supply chains that have very high forecast error or many stocking locations or disconnected demand signals, long lead times. If you're not able to control it well, it leads to excessive inventory, high inventory-driven costs, inefficient production, et cetera. Implementing more of a demand-driven supply chain with getting real-time sales data shared with all your supply chain partners is one of the ways to combat or avoid the bullwhip effect. Walmart was one of the better-known successful examples of being an early adopter, and they really drove their point-of-sale data all the way through their supply chain. The key point is that actual demand has become more volatile due to empowered consumer trend, other factors. So to stay competitive, companies and ourselves, we need to find and use the most advanced supply chain methods we can to shorten cycle time so that we're more responsive to those changes. So what are some of the challenges that make-to-order or configure-to-order companies face? Again, forecasts are never going to be perfect. Regardless if you're make-to-stock or make-to-order, you're always going to have a challenge with your demand forecasting. But make-to-order companies typically have shorter outbound supply chains with less inventory stocking locations than make-to-stock companies, but they still have inventory risk, and it's more upstream in their raw materials and their sub-assemblies. If you're make-to-order, you typically require more capacity flexibility in your production line because you're not buffering with FGI as much. You're just making it to order. So you've got a higher risk of production line shutdowns. If you've got raw material issues, sub-assembly issues due to fluctuating demand, there's a much higher risk of production line inefficiencies. Also, since make-to-order companies typically build to real-time actual orders rather than building to forecast, they need to move faster and be very efficient. If there's any delay in accessing information from multiple systems of record, having to rely on manual processes and such is just not practical. So generally, some type of process automation is required. And if you don't have solid processes and some automation, there's a very high risk to product and service quality, particularly in your manufacturing area. I think about the vision of Lucille Ball. If you remember I Love Lucy, her friend Vivian, probably dating myself, half of you are like, who is that? But there's the famous clip, you can see it out on YouTube or something, they're on the chocolate production line, manually trying to package chocolate, and it gets going too fast for them. They can't keep up manually. They're eating chocolate, stuffing it in their pockets, all that good stuff. Again, key point, actual demand, much more volatile, shortened lead times, make to stock, make to order, doesn't matter. To stay competitive, you've got to find ways to shorten your cycle time and be more responsive. So, all of us do our best to use engineering design or manufacturing technology changes to help shorten cycle times, but depending on the industry that we're in or the product type, there's limits to what can be done. So companies continue to look within their supply chains to find better ways to manage this volatility and the shortened lead times. Two fundamental requirements that are out there now for our supply chains. One, the need for speed and accuracy in all of our trading partner communication and operations. Slow manual processes or even small manual mistakes regarding item details or quantities or delivery timing that you're communicating to a partner, they can cost a lot of time, a lot of resources to correct, not to mention unhappy customers, lost sales. The second one is the need for speed and flexibility to quickly add or change trading partners, whether it's a supplier, a 3PL logistics company, a warehouse, a carrier. As companies grow, we look to expand into new markets and geographies. That often requires to hook up with new trading partners, or companies will try to gain a tighter focus on their core competencies. So say, hey, let's outsource some of these activities to a new trading partner, again, you've got a link with new partners, or maybe you've got trading partners and they're not performing well, they're not competitive. You can't afford to have a long, painful, resource-intensive project to add or switch your trading partners. So it requires flexibility in how we connect with trading partners. For example, if you've got high-volume suppliers, often it makes sense to invest in EDI or XML connections. Hopefully you've got some kind of standard signals or content or mapping to make it a little quicker. If you've got low-volume suppliers, it often makes sense to use web portals or something of that nature that is a lot more cost-effective but still efficient. And maybe mid-tier suppliers, some kind of a hybrid approach. So what are some of the existing technology and process solutions that are out there to help deal with demand volatility and shorten lead times? One of them is to increase supplier collaboration upstream. So a good starting point is better visibility for both you and your suppliers into each other's key data where you have dependencies on each other. There's a variety of ways to accomplish this, but one of the most common would be to implement a supplier web portal. Better visibility, it's a win-win. It allows both you and your supplier to better plan and optimize resources to get a shorter process cycle time for the both of you. Common examples, the types of data shared, maybe your mid to long-term demand data is used for production capacity planning by your supplier, or updated supplier lead times that you use for making order commitments to your customers can be shared or provided visibility to through a portal. Near-term supplier production plans and ASN or shipment data you can use for inbound receiving and production planning at your site. Supplier PO acknowledgments are common, just to quickly see if supplier can meet your requested quantities and dates. If you've got access to that kind of information and it's rapid, you've got time to adjust your production plans, reroute the order to another supplier. But if you don't have visibility, you don't have options, you see that information too late. So providing visibility via web portal also has the added benefit of being more of a self-service kind of information source. So for you and your supplier, you can make quick decisions, access the information, and you don't spend a lot of time with phone calls, long email exchanges, trying to find out what's going on because it's available via the visibility that you've provided each other. Another existing technology and process solution to help deal with demand volatility and short lead times is to use workflow automation. There's some excellent tools out there in the market you can map to your desired workflows. You can automatically send and receive data to execute the workflows. Some of the best tools have the capability to monitor your processes and provide you with an automated alert if the process goes outside of the parameters that you choose. If your supply network is less reliant on manual transactions or manual routing and approval, more automated, then your procurement, your order fulfillment ops, they'll have a shorter cycle time, be more efficient. It's especially true in a global network, where you have partners and operations in multiple time zones. You can have lower operating costs, inventory levels, generally be more responsive to change with that shorter cycle time. With some of the workflow automation tools, you can have the flexibility to choose how you want to set up your automated workflows and alerts. A simple example is use the 80-20 rule. So let's assume your demand is stable for 80% of your SKUs, and they only produce 20% of your sales, but demand is much more volatile for the smaller 20% of your SKUs that produce more of your sales. You could choose to automate your procurement, your inventory replenishment transactions for that stable 80% of your products and allow your buyers to focus their attention on the volatile 20%. There's lots of different rules you can use, but that's just one example. The key point is that if you effectively use workflow automation tools, you can leverage technology for what it's best at, which is rapidly, reliably executing standard types of transactions. And you can leverage people, or your people, for what they're best at, which hopefully is thinking, making good decisions, using good judgment. The objective, allow your people to focus their time on the highest value-added strategic activities and only get involved in transactional types of activities when an exception occurs that requires their attention. So again, the concept of management by exception is very important. Another existing technology and process solution to help deal with volatility is mobile functionality. Mobile functionality is perfect complement to workflow automation, specifically when you get into event management and alerts. It allows you to immediately receive and respond to events that require your attention from virtually anywhere. Your process cycle times are not going to be competitive if your team members have to wait till they're back at their desk to receive alerts or take actions on the alerts they receive. For example, you've got a PO process where if a PO is created that has a high dollar amount and it requires approval before sending it off to your supplier in Asia, you can't afford to wait till the next morning to see that and approve it and be at your desk to make that happen. If so, you might have just lost 24 hours in cycle time. Your supplier is over there in Asia running their production planning, and if they don't have that in by their morning, you just miss that window. So it's critical that you can get that kind of information quickly. If you get the alert on your smartphone, you can quickly approve it, send it off to your supplier. You just saved yourself 24 hours. Another example, your supplier may have provided you an acknowledgement to a PO. It's for a ship date that's 2 days later than you requested. You want to see that as quick as you can and respond to it so that you can initiate some sort of action to maybe mitigate the risk or still meet your customer's date. Maybe you can still route it to another supplier. Maybe you can authorize expedited shipping. If you get that alert right away that says, hey, your supplier just asked your PO 2 days late, you've got an opportunity to respond. But if it's a much slower process or a manual process, you may have lost that window. Obviously, mobile devices, there's been a huge growth in them and the use in them throughout companies. Data, recent surveys say it's going to continue to grow like wild and triple in large companies. So mobile access, mobile software is critical for success. If you're not taking advantage of the technology, you're likely falling behind because your competitors are. Another existing technology and process solution to help you deal with volatility and shorten lead times is to implement a supply chain management console to help increase visibility and control across multiple or diverse systems. I know all of us strive to keep our systems landscape as simple as you can. The reality is business changes occur. You often deal with significant chunks of time where you've got multiple different systems in production that were not originally intended to integrate with each other. It's rare to find a company that's 100% running a complete end-to-end integrated product suite from one provider like SAP or Oracle or Microsoft. Even if the company could afford to license a large end-to-end suite, although most can't, there's normal business changes and cycles that occur that interrupt this scenario. Common examples are like mergers and acquisitions. Company A is running SAP, ERP, they buy company B who's running Oracle or something else. It takes a long time to get to common processes, common systems. Or you've got a new system rollout, maybe you're growing, you're successful, you're replacing your legacy or your homegrown system as you grow, or you're adding a new off-the-shelf, best-of-breed kind of package. You end up with diverse systems. So there are solutions available in the market that act as a single supply chain management console. They can provide a common view across the different systems. Could be different ERPs, order management systems, procurement systems, etc. Often there's a real compelling return on investment for implementing this type of a console and getting to common business processes faster instead of just continuing to live and execute with separate, non-synergistic or redundant processes. So some of the previously described solutions, maybe they sound appealing, but due to budget or other constraints, you're not currently in a position to purchase or implement a new software tool or a new automation solution in the near future, but there's still hope. There's stuff you can do. This slide highlights a few fundamental supply chain actions you can take relatively quickly to help your company deal with demand volatility and shorten lead times. Again, common theme, trying to shorten your overall cycle times to be more agile, more responsive to changes. So first potential action sounds basic, easier said than done, but reducing supplier lead times. So you can always negotiate with your suppliers, talk, understand their pain points, try to come to a win-win to help improve their efficiency. Maybe there's more of an optimal order quantity or batch run size that works for them, maybe a different transportation method, but something to help cut that lead time with your supplier There's always opportunity to negotiate. Another one is exploring local suppliers. So obviously if you have local suppliers, they're closer, shorter distances. You've got shorter transportation lead times. Often there's shorter communication cycle time if you're in the same time zone, or if you speak the same language, you can communicate more efficiently sometimes. You can also visit or check the quality of the production or the materials more frequently if they're local. So often local suppliers are a good way to shorten cycle times and get some more efficiency without a lot of technology. Another opportunity, backup suppliers or a backup network of suppliers. You want options if your preferred supplier is not able to meet your demand. Say your product was wildly successful, volumes are way up, orders are way up, you need additional capacity. So having a backup supplier that can provide extra capacity or maybe diversify the risk, financial risk if your partner maybe has financial issues, or geography risk, recent examples, tsunami, flood, things of that nature. There's always a risk to single sourcing. So with a backup network, you get a little more capacity to handle swings in demand and also mitigate some risk. Another opportunity, just reducing the variety of materials that you have in your supply chain. So fewer SKUs that you're selling or smaller BOMs can really simplify the supply chain. Easier to forecast, reduces your inventory risk if you're not holding as many flavors of your product. Easier to schedule and optimize production. Less transactional overhead, buying and moving all the stuff around. Sometimes you can get discounts for larger orders. So again, just looking to something like simplifying your BOMs or simplifying the SKUs that you offer can really help provide some flexibility. Another one, just ordering more frequently. So if you order more frequently, you have less inventory on hand, less inventory costs, less risk. You're more responsive to demand changes. You need to balance it, obviously, against things like higher transportation cost, higher transactional costs. If you're ordering more frequently, maybe you can't fill a truck or you can't fill a pallet, so your transportation costs may go up or transactional costs. But depending on where you're at in your product life cycle, maybe that flexibility of more frequent ordering is more valuable and offset some of those other costs. So that's another good way to shorten cycle time and be more responsive. Again, the theme of all these things is getting more agile, getting more responsive to changes, and trying to do that via shortening cycle times. So if you are in a position to purchase or implement new software or automation solution to help you deal with volatility and shorten lead times, maybe we can help. Take Supply Chain is who's sponsoring the webinar. That's who I work for. And we offer solutions in this space. So our core area is trading partner collaboration, process efficiency, automation in the manufacturing and distribution space. We offer our solutions on the cloud, on-premise, mobile devices. It's available as software. We provide full services and support around that. We're based in Austin, Texas. We've been around since '94. And there's a list of some logos there of some of our customers and folks where we've helped to improve their supply chains. So why work with Take Supply Chain? One of the key reasons, the key tools that we have is what we call OneSCM. It's our centralized trading partner collaboration and management solution. It's not a rip and replace. It really complements your existing systems. It's flexible and ERP agnostic. So if you're running SAP, running Oracle, running some other system, it's built to easily integrate with multiple different enterprise systems. Similarly, on the trading partner side, it's very flexible, integrating with trading partners regardless of their technology. You can do EDI, XML, web portal, other methods, so it's very flexible. And there's also a full suite of capabilities via the portal, some of them listed there on the website, mainly in the procure-to-pay or automation arena, visibility to partners, etc. So some of the key benefits of OneSCM, closed-loop procure-to-pay cycle. So in a nutshell, what that means is there's end-to-end capabilities to automate the procure-to-pay cycle, which includes communicating and managing, at the beginning, purchase orders, purchase order changes, acknowledgments from your suppliers, the ability for suppliers to create package tracking numbers, send you ASNs, visibility to shipments, compliant labels to help automate your receiving. The suppliers can flip the PO to an invoice to do e-invoicing, matching of the invoice, and just automating that whole procure-to-pay process. It's a lot of different things, but it doesn't have to be implemented as a big bang. You can implement in a phased approach with different modules and just target what your biggest pain points are to get the ROI at each phase and prove that it's working, get your money back, and then maybe expand to some other signals or some other areas. Forecast visibility, the ability to share schedules and longer-term demand plan information pre-purchase order with suppliers and partners, typically replacing spreadsheets or other email-based manual processes. That's something that can easily be done with OneSCM. Supplier commitments and lead time. So there's the ability for suppliers to provide their commitments to your plan schedules and longer-term demand plans. They can also update their lead times. Again, that can be provided with a web-based portal and have automated feedback into your back-end systems. You can also include creation of order releases against that and do lots of things on the automation side, so you don't have people executing these transactions manually. Finally, the advanced workflow automation. So the ability is there to design, configure your desired process workflows, including the parameters that you want for alerts. It's very flexible and configurable. You're not forced to fit into a narrowly defined tool process or software process. You can actually set up your desired process and your parameters. Really helps you shorten cycle times, as we described, via the automation, and you can get to true management by exception. Make sure your people are focused on the highest value-add activity for your business and not just doing transactions. And we would love to partner with you and help you improve your supply chain if you're interested.